What's up everybody, Genix Dividend Investor here. In this video I show you a bunch of new information about my dividend portfolio in Fidelity that I've never shown before. Then I'll share some interesting views of my portfolio in my spreadsheet tool, and I'll end things telling you about how I just repaired a relationship with a relative that I've not talked to for 10 years. And finally I'll show you some comments from some folks who don't believe what I'm saying or simply don't enjoy my content. So I encourage you to watch from beginning to end, as I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay, I started working on this video on Sunday, November 24th in the morning when the kids were still sleeping because I knew that my upcoming week would be kind of busy and I wanted to get this out. My dad is flying into town to stay with us for Thanksgiving, and we're planning on hosting about 15 folks at our house this year, so I needed to get on the ball working on this video if I wanted to be able to release it on the weekend after the holiday. And if you're new to my channel, then welcome, and feel free to watch my older videos if you want to hear about how I built my portfolio over the last 30 years and about my background and all that jazz. I'm not going to regurgitate all that in this video, so instead I'll just jump into Fidelity where I have my dividend portfolio. I've covered some stuff up in red that I don't want to show, like my account numbers and such. Here you can see that my accounts add up to $3.3 million worth of tickers, with $1.46 million in my IRA, $1.63 million in my taxable, and a little over $200K in my wife's rollover retirement account that I manage. If I click on Fidelity's total return graph, which for me is about 3 years worth because I moved to Fidelity in 2021, we see that my annualized return has been 10.54%, which slightly is beating out the 10.12% for the SP 500. Newer viewers can watch my older videos where I show you my portfolio when I used to be in E-Trade as well as before that. A new piece of data I've never noticed before in Fidelity is this portfolio risk chart. Here it shows my Sharpe ratio is at 0.47 as compared to 0.32 for the SP 500. I asked ChatGPT what that means, and it said the following. A stock portfolio with a Sharpe ratio of 0.47 compared to the SP 500's 0.32 is indicative of better risk-adjusted performance. The Sharpe ratio measures the portfolio's return per unit of risk, so a higher value suggests the portfolio has generated more return relative to the risk taken compared to the benchmark. This indicates the portfolio is more efficient in converting risk into returns. While 0.47 is not exceptionally high, as ratios above 1 are considered very strong, it still outpaces the SP 500, which is a widely followed benchmark. This suggests skilled management or a favorable asset mix in the portfolio. Now, I wouldn't call myself a skilled portfolio manager, but hey, AI is never wrong, right? Also, it says my portfolio's beta is 0.66, though my spreadsheet calculated it to be 0.71, so I'm not sure why there's a disparity. I'll show you my tickers next, but a key message I want to leave you with is that I strongly recommend against copying my portfolio, as I built mine for my needs as someone in retirement. It's not meant for someone focused on growing your net worth. Like my kids have their own portfolios, and while they have some tech dividend stocks, they also have some non-dividend stocks as well. Okay, let's go over my positions using a summary dividend view that I've never shown before, and this is page 1 of 3, sorted alphabetically. It starts with $291 of cash in my IRA, which came from a Caterpillar dividend a few days ago. Then you can see I have 408 shares of Apple worth almost 94 grand, and it has a super low 0.44% yield, and it's in my taxable account, and it generates $408 in divvies per year. Next up you see 3 rows of AbbVie, because I hold it in my wife's rollover account, in my taxable account, and in my IRA. I'll show you a rolled up view of AbbVie in my spreadsheet tool, but you can see all the details in here. So like I have 269 shares of it in the rollover account, and that generates $1,764 in divvies a year. Then I have 416 shares of it in my taxable account, and it generates $2,728 a year. And 247 shares in my IRA, generating $1,620 a year. Then I have BTI in each account, and you'll notice minor differences between the income it estimates in here and what my spreadsheet estimates, as my spreadsheet also automatically accounts for changing currency conditions, whereas Fidelity isn't. Then you see Caterpillar, Colgate-Palmolive, Chevron, and Devo, one of my 3 income ETFs I own, all of which I bought using profits from some other tickers I partially sold. Next up you see Duke Energy, which rounds out page 1 of 3. Moving on to page 2, we see Enterprise Products Partner and MLP. Then Goldman Sachs, Home Depot, then another income ETF in IDVO, then my 3rd income ETF in JEPQ, then J&J, Kimberly-Clark, McDonald's, and Altria. And of course, feel free to pause this and take a screenshot if you want to dive into more details. Moving on to page 3, we see Microsoft, Realty Income, Pepsi, Procter & Gamble, Philip Morris, Starbucks, SCHD, Southern Company, Travelers, and ExxonMobil. In total, we see $3.296 million worth of stocks, and Fidelity estimates that I'll make $131.4 grand in income each year. Sometimes someone will leave a comment saying something like, "Wow, you aren't making very much income with your portfolio. You could make a lot more if you went into higher yield stuff." And yes, of course, if I wanted to, I could take my entire $3.3 million portfolio, put it all in JEPQ or whatever, and make around 320 grand a year in US dollars, which is about $450,000 Canadian dollars a year. I mean, Fidelity estimates that JEPQ is yielding 9.37%, and 9.37% of 3.3 million is over 300 grand. That being said, I expect JEPQ to generate more like 7% to 8% income as a more realistic estimate, but the point is that if income was my only goal and I was okay taking on that risk, then of course I could go into higher yield tickers and make more income. The more interesting question is why don't I do that? And if you watch my channel more, then you'd understand my risk tolerances and why I prefer to hold mostly blue chip stocks that have lower yields, and why I only gas my dividends with a small amount of income ETFs. Moving on, this is a screenshot that Fidelity calls my activity page, showing the most recent transactions flowing through my accounts. So like on November 25th, Fidelity auto-transferred out $1.22 in my checking account, which was from a bit of interest I got on the 21st. On November 20th, I got a Caterpillar dividend for about $292. Below that on the 19th, we see a transfer out of $1,195 into my checking account from my recent AbbVie, Colgate-Palmolive, Realty Income, and Procter & Gamble dividends. On the 18th, we see $1,272 of dividends transferring out to my checking account, and another $2,613 transferring out for my Apple dividend and my EPD distribution. I love getting those EPD payouts in my taxable account because I owe $0 in taxes on them for another 6 or 7 years until my cost basis gets to zero. Pretty awesome is that one payout basically pays my mortgage for the month, kind of like my Altria payout pays my mortgage and has a bunch left over. Moving on, here's my asset allocation per Fidelity. So you can see that I'm about 94% US stocks with a smattering of other things. Then we come to geographic exposure of my tickers, and we see that I'm 96% North America with 3.5% UK and a small amount from the rest of the world that I'd like to slowly build up. And then here's another view I've not noticed before in Fidelity, which shows that 68% of my ETFs are rated 5 stars, and then the rest are unrated by Morningstar. And then here's another new view which is showing analyst sentiment towards my stocks, and you can see that they are neutral to bullish on 71% of my tickers and bearish on 29%. Okay, now let's move on to my portfolio spreadsheet tool, which my Patreon aristocrats and kings gain access to as long as they are members. I know this is pretty small, but you can always take a screenshot if you want to dive into it. I have this sorted by largest positions first, so SCHD is currently my number 1 position, and I have 8,020 shares of it, which is 7.14% of my portfolio. It was green on the day I took this screenshot, and I have 235 grand of it. It pays out an estimated $1,959 in divvies per quarter, or $7,837 per year. It's at a 3.33% dividend yield right now, and it has a dividend CAGR of 12%, which obviously will slow down. Next up is Realty Income, and it generates about $12,000 a year, then Altria, which makes $15,500 a year, then AbbVie, which yields $6,113 a year. After that is EPD, yielding $10,045 in distribution per year, then Microsoft at a low $1,241 a year. Microsoft and Apple, which is listed a little bit down below, are my lower yielding, higher growing tickers, at least that's how they've behaved historically. Next up is JEPQ, J&J, Devo, ExxonMobil, Procter & Gamble, Pepsi, Duke, McDonald's, Goldman Sachs, Coca-Cola, BTI, Southern Company, Apple, Philip Morris, Caterpillar, Chevron, Kimberly-Clark, Colgate-Palmolive, Home Depot, Travelers, IDVO, which is the international version of Devo, and finally Starbucks. So in total, I have about 43,500 shares of tickers, and on the day I filmed this, my portfolio ended up 0.83%, which equates to a gain of $27,000, taking me to $3.296 million. My spreadsheet estimates that I make about $131,300 in divvies per year, and my portfolio's average weighted starting yield is 3.98%, and it's at a 5.87% dividend CAGR. My portfolio's average weighted PE is at 24, so that tells me that things are expensive. And we see my portfolio's average weighted beta is 0.71. Then here's my portfolio value by sector and passive income by sector. The largest 5 sectors by market value for me are consumer staples at 15.4% of my portfolio, ETFs at 12.7%, SIN stocks at 12.4%, tech is at 12.1%, and energy at 11.7%. The top 5 in terms of dividend income are SIN stocks at 20.9%, then energy at 13.8%, ETFs at 12.5%, tech at 12%, and consumer staples at 11.1%. And then this is my dividend calendar view, where each row is a ticker, sorted by highest positions on top, and each column represents a month. So May, June, July, August, September, and October are the columns on the left and are actual dividends I've gotten. November is the green column we're currently in, and then the columns to the right are future months. Let's pick a random ticker, let's say AbbVie. This shows I got $1,444 of dividends in May of this year, and then again in August, and then again this month. Then 3 months from now in February, I should get $1,528 in divvies because AbbVie just did a dividend hike. I like to run polls on my Twitter account where my followers can guess how much they think my stocks will raise their dividends by, and you can see how this year the majority of my respondents correctly guessed that AbbVie would hike between 3 to 6%, and they ended up doing a 5.8% hike. So 5.8% of $1,444.60 that I just got is equal to $83.79, which is the amount my quarterly payout got increased by, which is why my spreadsheet estimates that in February my payout will increase up to $1,528 a quarter. Or let's take another random ticker in ExxonMobil. You can see that in June they paid me $1,144 in divvies, and again paid me that in September, but are scheduled to pay me $1,192 next month in December. This time, the majority of my Twitter folks guessed that Exxon would increase between 2 to 4%, but they actually ended up doing a 4.2% hike. Anyway, on the bottom of each month, you can see the total amount of dividend income I got, and it averages to about $11,000 a month. And then here's a section of my spreadsheet where it estimates how my dividend income might trend year over year, based on if I don't have the drip on, which is the top line, or if I'm reinvesting dividends with the drip, which is the bottom line. So you can see in the current year I'm at a little over 131 grand of annual income, and if my dividend hikes happen as they historically have happened, then next year I'd make 139 grand, and then 147 grand the year after that, etc. At year 10 I'd be making about 232 grand a year, which is pretty crazy, and that's if I was using all my dividends and not reinvesting a dime. But I'm currently reinvesting a small amount of my ETFs back into themselves, so hopefully I'll end up somewhere between these two rows of estimates. Like if all my drips were on, then by year 10 this estimates I'd be making 330 grand a year in dividend income. Of course, it's also possible that some of my stocks could cut their dividends, in which case these estimates might not hold. In the middle here, it estimates my monthly average income is $10,941 a month, or $2,524 a week, or $359 a day, or about $15 an hour, every hour, year-round, whether I'm sleeping or playing video games or whatever. You can also see that on the day I took this screenshot that the SP 500 closed up 0.35%, and we saw that my spreadsheet ended up 0.83% on that day. Generally, my portfolio should do better on down days, as I should lose less than the market on average, but I also tend to do worse on the up days. So this is just an example day where I buck the probable trends. And this has income estimates that keep going out over time, and the chart here shows my actual dividend income received since I started this portfolio in January of 2020, and you can see how it's trended up over time. You can also see how this estimates that in year 25, my no-drip income estimate is at 546 grand a year, and 1.17 million if I've been reinvesting for all that time. Inflation will eat into some of this, of course, but still pretty cool. Okay, now I'll switch gears and talk about the relationship thing and some less friendly comments I recently got. So I have a relative that we used to help out financially as she was down on her luck, and she used to help us out doing things like taking stuff to Goodwill or sometimes watching our kids on date night or stuff like that. This was someone who was close to us and we trusted. Unfortunately, over time, things went south, and it came out that she was saying some mean things to our kids, and it came out that she was opening our mail and then sealing it back up, apparently because she was super nosy, and it came out that she went through our closet and found my wife's diary, which she then read, and then proceeded to make fun of her for stuff she had written in it when we were having an argument. This came out when we confronted her on a bunch of things we found out about, and ultimately we determined that it was best for the family if we cut contact with her completely. Fast forward to 10 years later, and I decided that it was time to forgive and move forward, and so I reached out to her and invited her to Thanksgiving. It was pretty tough for me to do that, but I knew that she regretted all the crap she had done, and ultimately I figured it would be nice for all of us if we repaired things and tried to move forward again. I'm happy I did that, and I'm hopeful that going forward we can all have a healthy relationship, and my point in sharing that is that sometimes it might be worth it to forgive people for crap that happened in the past, though I can understand how difficult it might be to reach out to someone that you previously cut off. I sometimes wonder if social media has helped me better deal with people in real life that aren't always pleasant. Like a few days ago I got this comment from someone who didn't believe that what I was saying in my video I did called I'm a Retiree, 9 Lessons I Wish I'd Known About Dividends Earlier. Specifically he said, "Bro talks with a 26-year-old voice, talks about playing games with friends, and he says he's 50, and thus he didn't trust me." So I thought that was kind of an interesting comment. I mean, I've been playing video games since I was like 6 years old when a relative of mine showed up with his Apple II computer and I fell in love with gaming. And the first computer I got was a Commodore 64, and then got an Apple computer as well, and then eventually got a PC, and of course I played on Nintendos and Ataris and Xboxes and blah blah blah, and I've stuck with gaming my entire life. In the 80s and 90s I got into modem games, and then text mods, and then MMOs like Meridian 59, Ultima Online, EverQuest, World of Warcraft, and tons of others as the years went on. I got into raiding with guilds, and to this day I still play online games with my friends multiple times a week. I used to be so into MMOs that I'd take time off when new games got released or new areas did or whatever. So maybe I'm an edge case, but I don't know why that's unbelievable. I've got a pretty immature sense of humor, and I'm a Gen Xer, so TLDR, if you don't believe what I'm saying, then my recommendation would be not to watch. I mean, I wouldn't watch someone if I didn't believe them, but I can tell you that everything I'm saying is true, so another option is watch more of my videos, and then maybe things will make more sense and you'll believe me. Or maybe you're someone who believes me, but you just don't like my videos. Like this fella here thought that same video I was just talking about was boring. Fair enough. Fortunately, there are over 50 million YouTube channels out there, so I'm sure you can find someone who creates exciting dividend investing content for you. My hope for you is that regardless of what channels you watch, that you decide to invest. I'm on a mission to get people to invest intelligently, as I know what a positive, life-changing reality that can bring. And remember, what you're not changing, you're choosing. That's true whether we're talking about your relationships, finances, body, or whatever. Now sure, I don't know what you're dealing with and going through right now. However, I do know that you can make it. Don't worry about your past. Maybe you didn't start investing in your 20s and you regret it, and that's understandable. But the fact is that you can accomplish amazing things at any age. I mean, Colonel Sanders opened his first Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise in his 60s. Laura Ingalls Wilder didn't publish her first book, Little House on the Prairie, until she was also in her 60s. Or you dividend investors might be motivated to find out about Ann Scheiber, an IRS auditor who never made more than $4,000 a year, and apparently was in her 50s before she invested her $5,000 life savings in the stock market, in companies she knew like Pepsi and Pfizer and Bristol Myers, amongst others. She read company reports and decided to buy and hold and keep reinvesting her dividends, and realized that it's probably best to avoid selling most of the time, even during nasty bear markets. Like in the 1970s, her drug stocks were down 50%, but she held on. Slowly her portfolio kept growing, and all the while Anne remained frugal with her expenses. Over the next 50 years, her investments grew into $22 million. Her portfolio was generating about $800,000 a year in dividends by the time she died at 101 years old in 1994. She attributed her incredible results to investing, living frugally, and compounding from being in the market for so long. My point in sharing all that is to reinforce that it's never too late for you to change and go on a better path. And while I mentioned frugality, it's also important to realize that it's okay to spend your money now and then. Live life and just don't be wasteful and don't forget about your future. And even if you haven't started investing yet, then don't stress about your today worrying about your tomorrow. Instead, just research how to invest and then start. Action will make your tomorrow better. Action will improve your mood. So don't just settle for what is. Build towards where you want to go. Then don't give up, no matter what happens. Just keep pushing, keep going. Make the most of the time you have, especially with your loved ones, as you never know when that time will end. What matters is what you do, not what I or anyone else has done. You aren't in competition with me or my portfolio or with anyone in the world. You're only in competition with yourself from yesterday. So just focus on how you can become better tomorrow relative to where you are right now. Anyway, please leave me a comment and tell me if you enjoyed this video, as that kind of engagement really helps push my videos more. And please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and click that bell notification. Consider checking out my Fast Graphs affiliate link along with my coupon code in the description of this video, as using both should allow new users to get 25% off their first payment, even if they sign up for a full year. I'll also suggest that you try out my Seeking Alpha affiliate link, as new users can often get good discounts for signing up, and they have a special Black Friday sale running from now until December 3rd, 2024. Plus, take a look at my Patreon seats to see if there's any you want to sign up for, but if those are sold out, like they often are, then please consider joining as a channel member, as it has a slew of perks I think you'd enjoy. Finally, don't forget to join my free Dividend Discord chat server, which has over 11,000 dividend investors on it from 83 countries around the world. Thanks for watching, stay positive, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor, and my videos are for entertainment and inspirational purposes only. Investing of any kind involves risk. I'm only sharing my opinions with no guarantee of gains or losses on investments.